Welcome once again to the official MUFON podcast. I'm Richard Beckwith. Imagine you're a law enforcement officer, someone charged with public safety and with providing reliable testimony in court to convict criminals for the crimes they commit. Imagine the consequences when you see or experience something you can't explain. What happens if you see a UFO or run across a cryptid creature or an apparition in the dark of night on a lonesome highway? What would you do? Who would you turn to? Who could you ever talk to about it? Or would you ever even talk about it again? Marianne Robb is retired with 34 years as a police officer in Arizona. Marianne gained her experiences as a patrol officer, detective in arsons, property crimes, narcotics, and as a crime prevention officer. Marianne joined MUFON in 2015 and became a field investigator. She is an instructor for the MUFON Boot Camp and Symposium, teaching advanced interview techniques and evidence collection. What she learned from doing investigations and attending MUFON meetings inspired her to commit to help finding the truth behind the mysterious UFO phenomenon. Marianne believes that the government and others who are researching this phenomenon are all looking for the same thing, the truth. She hopes one day all of these research groups will work together toward the common goal of uncovering what is going on in our skies. Retired with 25 years as a police officer in Arizona, Dave Rich started his career in patrol, then worked in the investigations unit as a gang detective, homicide, sex crimes, and narcotics detective. Dave Rich joined the Mutual UFO Network and worked as a field investigator. He is an instructor for the MUFON Boot Camp and Symposium, teaching advanced interview techniques and evidence collection. I'm very happy to have them both here with me tonight. Marianne Robb, Dave Rich, welcome to the MUFON podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's very nice to have you here today. It was nice to see Mark. Thank you for having him poke his head in and say hi. That was a real treat.
Hey, you never know when he's going to show up around this place. Every once in a while, we turn around and there he is on the doorstep.
Right. Well, now you folks have a presentation that you're going to give for us at the MUFON Symposium this year. And I'm interested in the work that you do, and you have started something you call UFOPD, is that correct?
Well, it's a UAPPD, and it stands for Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon Police Department.
Okay. And what was the purpose for the formation of that organization?
Well, the purpose is actually kind of an interesting story. Marianne and I are both retired law enforcement, and we were having, Marianne was actually having a get-together with a friend of ours, Alejandro Rojas, and the subject came up of, well, if we have all these first responders that are working, they work a 24-hour shift, 24 hours a day, there's always police officers on, firefighters on, EMTs, rangers, they have to be seeing stuff. I mean, especially nighttime, you're working on a patrol shift, you're out in the middle of nowhere, you're looking up at the sky, there's stuff that you're seeing. And Alejandro was asking, well, hey, if they're seeing stuff, why isn't there anybody talking about it? And that was what caused us to kind of be like, well, we understand exactly why. And he's like, well, why not? And so it was kind of this unusual set of circumstances where like he was questioning it because we've had so many experiences in law enforcement. We were just like, oh yeah, that's just the way it's done. And then it became like a thing where Alejandro was like, you really need to tell people why officers, firefighters, first responders aren't talking about the stuff that they're seeing. Because once he started to figure out what it was, it became really clear to all of us that, what we thought was just kind of like something that everybody just understood, they really don't. So understanding the ramifications and the stigmas associated with a sighting of some sort and then the profession is very similar to like an airport or airline pilot or a military officer, stuff like that. We're just kind of, as law enforcement or first responders, having that same kind of level of stigma.
And I would assume, and correct me if I'm wrong, that these folks probably feel like they can speak to you because you have experience in their line of work, and they know that they can trust you. Is that fair to say?
And that's 100% accurate. We have had people that, since we've started this, and we've only been doing it for about a year now, we have had people come up to us and flat out just tell us, I could never talk about this to anyone else. But because they find out our backstories, they find out stuff that we have experienced, stories that we have heard from other officers, other responders, there's that level of comfort, because these are the same people that when we were on the job, we would go into high stress, highly violent situations together, and we had each other's back. I mean, we literally trusted each other with our lives. And now they experience something that they feel they can't talk about. Now here you are being presented by these same people that literally were willing to take a bullet for you. I can now open up to them because we have that connection. And that gives us the advantage that we've actually experienced firsthand in investigations that we have heard about that have been reported to MUFON, that we then ended up talking to the people afterwards, and we got so much more information because they looked at us and said, well, I would never tell them that, but I'll tell you this.
And I would imagine that that also comes from your experience as investigators, knowing how to ask questions, how to relate to a witness so that they don't feel so intimidated, and they can give you the information that you need. And maybe you're better at that than and I would assume that you are as well, better than that than the average investigator.
Well, and it's funny you mention that, because we kind of talk about that all the time. My background in law enforcement is I was actually a homicide and sex crimes detective for a while, where I was talking to people who had extremely traumatic, emotional, physical events happen to them. And we go through all sorts of training on how to get people to feel comfortable speaking to us and get people to open up. And I'd be lying if I didn't say that that training helped out immensely in a lot of these interviews, where getting people to open up to you is the hardest part. And Marianne was a detective as well. We have this ability to kind of like open up and let them kind of tell us what's going on.
And we also, our training that we've had as law enforcement and investigators, we take our training and we share it with folks that want to become field investigators with MUFON when we do the MUFON boot camp that we have every November here in the Phoenix area. And also at the symposium, we will be teaching FIs during that training advanced interview techniques. So that will be what we do as investigators. We really enjoy sharing with other people so they can do a good interview when they're talking to somebody.
So what I'm interested in is some of the cases that you've handled. Can you talk about some of those without violating some confidence that you have, or are there some interesting cases that you've worked on that you feel that you could share with our audience?
We've got a couple. Like we just had one that we just talked to 3 days ago.
3 days.
3 days ago about an officer who was out on a traffic accident, and it was, it's Arizona, trust me, horse versus car. So it happens here in Arizona. We got a lot of horses.
Yeah.
And through the story that he recounted to us, the horse ended up being killed in the accident. And it was at night, and they ended up moving the horse out of the roadway. And after, they're waiting for the tow truck to get back. And in about a 15, 20-minute window, he goes back and the horse is gone. And of course, the first thing that everybody says is, well, it must not have been dead. Well, the part of the story that I didn't tell you is, so it was hit. They were out in the roadway, and it was in the middle of the road for a couple of hours. They're standing there waiting for tow trucks, waiting for people to show up, because it's out in the outlying area of Arizona. And this horse, big pile of blood. The guy's like, no, the horse is dead. After about an hour and a half, horse starts thrashing. And so he jumps back. Another officer there, kind of freaks out a little bit and unloads a magazine into the horse. You get my meaning. So he basically shoots it.
To put it out of its misery, because clearly it's not going to the hospital. It's not going to get any better.
No. And so it was clearly done at that, passed away at that point. And so they ended up moving it out of the roadway. and then waiting for this tow truck. So when the tow truck arrives, everybody's kind of looking around going, well, where's the horse? And they could find the blood in the roadway where it first got hit. They can find the marks that were being dragged out of the roadway. They can find the big blood puddle on the side of the road where the horse was left, and there's no horse. Now, the officer was there the entire time sitting in his car, so no car came up or truck came up and picked up this horse without him seeing it. There was also no blood trail or any sign that the horse got up and walked away, because this part of Arizona is up in the White Mountains, and there was about 1.5 feet of snow on the ground. So if it got up and walked away, you're going to see footprints, you're going to see blood trail, you're going to see something. So this area of the state, there have been a couple of, I don't want to say 100%, but possible abductions, possible things where people were seen there and then disappear. And so it was a story where he has been sitting on this story for years and never wanted to tell anyone. And then he goes and tells us about this because he felt comfortable talking about it. And that's like one example. That's a very small one of it. We have some really, really in-depth ones, but I don't know how much time we want to really go into.
Yeah. I'd like to share one that I did an interview with a gentleman. He does not want to be identified. Even though he's retired, he feels that if his name comes out in a story or a presentation, that he would lose his retirement with the government. He was a law enforcement officer in Arizona for over 20 years. He also worked with the prison system. So he was working with that. And he shared a story that within about 5 years' time, he was out doing some training, getting ready for some training. And all of a sudden, this cloud, it's a beautiful blue sky here in Arizona. And here comes a cloud that comes over him. And a craft comes out of that cloud and is there for just a few minutes, and then it's gone. Well, he said since he was the only one there getting the scenario ready for training, he says, I'm not reporting this. I'm not doing anything. A few months later, he's out in an area where there are some prisoners that are on the side of the road, and he's just kind of watching over with a few other law enforcement officers. Here now comes 3 clouds over them. And here comes 3 crafts over it. And everybody's just looking at that. Everybody's stunned, and they're just staring up at the sky and looking at these crafts. A couple of minutes later, boom, they're gone. Now, what kind of really stressed him out the most was he now had to report that. Not only did he see this, but you have a bunch of inmates that have seen this. So, of course, he explains that to a supervisor. Supervisor says, you need to shut up. Do not ever talk about this again. So he, of course, that's it. He didn't want to say anything. A year or so later, he's out with 2 other law enforcement officers. They're bird hunting down southern Arizona. And they are camping in this one area. One of their buddies go back to the car to go get some ammunition that they left behind. Car is maybe 150 yards from where their camp is. He's there, an hour or two go by, nothing. My law enforcement officer, my reporting person, and the other buddy walk back to the car. They find the doors wide open in the car, music blaring, the truck is on, and their buddy is sitting in the back of their truck with that 1,000-mile stare. So they have to kind of wake him up, and he goes, well, what are you doing here? I just came here to get the ammo. He goes, no, it's been at least 2 hours. You've been missing. And he goes, no, I'm just got here. So we got missing time on that. And real quick on the last part is the last time he ever had any contact is he was in bed sleeping, and his wife was right next to him. A couple of entities that he described basically are grays. They came in, he was paralyzed pretty much from his neck down, and they were over top of him. He kept trying to reach for his gun that he kept in his nightstand because he had no idea what in the world's going on. and they were there. They were just over top of them, doing whatever they were doing. Actually, he said some type of a prayer that made them take off. I mean, they were out of that room. They were gone. And he has never had any contact with them again after he said some type of prayer. But he was just, he had some issues afterwards. He has been the healthiest guy all his career, all his life. About 6 months after this occurred, he started having all these health issues, and the doctors cannot figure out what is wrong with him. But he had to retire, and now he's just sitting at home, doing what, hanging out with his family and stuff. But he cannot work again. Whatever it was, somehow we got a mysterious illness.
And clearly the event was so harrowing, obviously, that it caused this physical disability, or at least was associated with it, maybe sparked it. But is this individual, I'm assuming that this individual has gone and gotten therapy and that sort of stuff? Or
Yeah, he's gotten therapy, but again, he will not talk. I am the first person that he's ever told me. And he actually started to cry because he said, nobody believes me, and I can't, it's eating inside of him because he cannot get it out. He feels that he will lose his pension if he did come forward with these stories. But yeah, the doctors, he's been going to numerous doctors, for about a year or so, and they cannot diagnose. He was a very muscular guy. All his muscles are gone. He's very weak. And he has no idea. No family doesn't have any health issues. And he was just absolutely fine until about within 6 months after he was visited at his home.
that's kind of a disturbing story. Now, each of you, one of you has had an experience and the other one has not as a police officer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is correct.
Okay, and Marianne, you haven't had any experiences while you were on duty, right?
No, I've never had any experiences on or off duty.
Yeah, but Dave, you have. You got a call.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about that?
Not really one of the ones I want to go into right now.
Okay.
Just because of the nature of it. Because with UAPPD, we kind of address things that are all over the board. So we don't just address UFO sightings. We also address paranormal stuff. We also address cryptozoological things. So the encounter that I had was more of a paranormal type of encounter. So it's not really something that would really fit in with this, I think.
Yeah, that's probably true. I have had my own paranormal experience when I was a kid. I'm not going to go into it right now, but certainly not what MUFON does and what we do as UFO hunters, but still kind of within that realm of things that make you go, wow, life is really full of mysteries, and what I find, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, but what I find interesting about hunting UFOs is that it is a real mystery. I mean, there are mysteries that we all share, like, what happens when we die and what's the meaning to life and am I, those sorts of things. But then there are, life presents real mysteries. And that's the interesting thing about, I'm sure for you as law enforcement officers, that they present you with these real life mysteries, like Murder, She Wrote with flying saucers and ghosts and pixies and cryptids and that sort of thing. So, we're certainly open to talking about, some of those things. I'd be interested, and I think the audience too would be interested perhaps in some of your more interesting or one or more interesting stories about some cryptid things that you've investigated. I think our audience would be interested in that.
Well, and before we do that, because you can tell the one story. Yeah, we got a couple, but you can tell the one. Real quick, like part of like the unique hook of what we do with UAPPD, and the reason why we opened it up to more than just UFOs, but also cryptids and paranormal, is because we're firm believers that there's a link between the three of them. We don't really know what the link is, but we're a firm believer that it is. And with us, like the unique kind of hook that what we do is all of our witnesses so far have been some sort of law enforcement officer or first responder. So you're talking about a witness base that is basically designed to go into a stressful situation, make sense of it, kind of relatively unflappable, and kind of take everything in. And so these are the people that we're talking to. So
And highly credible.
highly credible. And that's what I think gives us our unique take on it, is that kind of perspective when you talk about that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But as far as cryptids go, if you want to do the...
Yeah, I had a friend of mine. This happened back, I believe, 1990, 2000. No, it's 2014.
2014, that's right.
2014. I had one of my civilian investigators with the police department that we worked for. He stopped me and talked to me, and he said, "I got a story for you. I'd like to run this by you." I said, "Sure." This was about 10 o'clock at night. He was driving up a 2-lane highway called 89, State Route 89. It's between Flagstaff, Arizona, up in northern Arizona, and Page, Arizona. Just to give you a little bit of perspective, it is a 2-lane road, straight, flat road. It's on the Navajo Reservation. There are absolutely no lights in the area, no trees, no homes, no nothing. It is just bare. And picture Mars. He's driving on this road in Mars. And I'm not kidding. It's that red rock. It's everything. So he's driving down 89. He's heading northbound. And he's going good speed because it's 10 o'clock at night. Nobody's out there. As he's coming up, he noticed that there's something on the right-hand side of the road, right there at the road edge. So he starts to slow down. And all of a sudden, as he's slowing down, this creature starts walking in front of his car, just nonchalantly walking from his right-hand side to the left side of his car and off the side of the road. He described it as a coyote-type looking creature. It was on all fours, and the back of this creature was approximately 4 feet tall on all fours. And this thing just nonchalantly walked across the roadway and just stared at his car. And he's thinking, wait a minute, this was an animal. And he's looking into the headlights. It's going to take off. It's not going to just nonchalantly walk across the road.
And just for the record, in Arizona, we have coyotes and we have Mexican gray wolves. Neither of them even come close to being as big as that.
Yeah. So it passes by him. It kind of freaks him out a little bit. He goes, I think I'm going to go a lot slower now. So he continues driving northbound, and approximately 2 miles down the road, he sees some object in the middle of the road. Now, this is two lanes with the double yellow line in the middle. And this something was right smack dab in the middle of the two lines, the yellow lines. So he starts slowing way, way down, probably about 30 or so miles an hour. And as he's approaching, he sees what he believes is the same creature. Now it's sitting on its hind legs, and it is staring at this investigator, my friend. He's staring at him as the investigator, I'll say, is driving northbound. This creature literally stares at the car and follows with its eyes. It follows the car as it passes, doesn't move, just sits on its haunches and watches as the investigator passes by. And he's just like, he can't believe it. And now I said, well, how tall do you think this thing was on its hind legs, on its haunches like that? He said it has to be at least 5 feet tall, at the least. And I mean, he just says it had this weird look on his face. So he heads into, he's really freaked out. He wanted to make a U-turn and go back and try to check out what he saw. He's an investigator with the police department. He's like, I have to see what this is. Luckily, he thought twice about it because both sides of the road are very soft shoulders.
Mm-hmm.
So he might have gotten stuck. So he did not turn around. He headed up into Page. He needed to kind of clear his head, relax, get to where there is light and there's a lot of people. So he pulls into a gas station in Page, goes in, and there's a Navajo woman that's the clerk behind the counter. And she's all bubbly, she's laughing, and she's talking to people, everything's good. My investigator, he grabs some snacks and a drink. He goes up to the counter. The clerk is just so bubbly. Hi, how are you? Where are you going? Where are you coming from? And they're just talkative. He says, can I ask you a question? She said, sure. He said, do you have any coyotes or wolves in this area? And she said, yeah, we have some coyotes, but because of how the terrain is, there's not any wolves. There's no way there's going to be a wolf. So she goes, well, why you ask? He told her the story that he told me. All of a sudden, her demeanor went from being very bubbly, very serious, and she got this look on her face that it's like, don't talk to me. She picked up his groceries, put them in a bag, handed to him, says, you need to leave now. And he was baffled. He goes, what in the world? So anyway, he left, and that was it. He came to me because he knew I was a MUFON Field Investigator, and he goes, what did I see? What was that? I don't understand. Why did the clerk, her demeanor change? I didn't understand that. So I contacted good friends of ours, John Dover, Stan Milford Jr., the Navajo Rangers, and I told them the story that the investigator told me, and they're saying, well, the demeanor, this creature that he saw once, and then 2 miles down the road, pretty much the same thing, and this thing is just sitting in the middle of the road. He said, they explained to me that Navajo people, first of all, you don't talk about skinwalkers, shapeshifters to any Navajo, day or night, but you really don't talk to them during the evening time, the nighttime. You might use the initials, but you never say the word skinwalker. So
you say, so what you say is, I want to talk about the SW.
Exactly. I mean, we even do that to be respectful to even John and Stan. To this day, when we talk about that, even in my own home, we'll call them SWs at night. If they say the word, great. But if they don't, and it's us, we will be very respectful and only use the initials with John and Stan. So he told me, he says, well, I believe what he saw with everything that you told me, he did see a skinwalker. So I says, okay. So I get a hold of my investigator. I go, hey, can you do me a favor? I would like for you to meet up with my sketch artist that I have. And a sketch artist is, like in police work, if you have a crime and you have a victim wanting to draw the suspect. Well, I asked the investigators, would you be willing to meet with my sketch artist and describe what you saw and have them draw what you saw? And he said, yes. So probably about an hour or so later, I don't have the picture with me. I could send this to you, but they showed me the picture of this creature that he saw. Now, it looks cartoonish. I understand that. And I'll show you the picture. This creature is on its hunches. It looks like a kind of a wolf thing, but its mouth is hanging open. Probably, what would you say? At least 2 or 3, 10 inches?
Yeah, like 6, 8 inches.
That's elongated.
Like a almost like disjointed jaw. Like its mouth was like hanging open and you could see like all the teeth in it and everything like that. Just unnaturally big is the way.
I'd love for you to send us that sketch. I'd love to show it to our audience. But you can email it to me and
sure.
I'll use an insert. But I'd love to show our audience. So he sees this creature with this gaping jaw and horrible teeth. Is it expressing any sort of ill intent? Does it look like it's going to eat him, or because I would be afraid that it would eat me. I'm not afraid of death. I'm just afraid of the hurt that you get when the monster eats you. After that it's not a big deal. But
that's why I was nervous. I was so glad that he decided not to turn around and go look at this. Now, could the creature still be there? I don't know. It was only a few feet that he was going to make a U-turn. You wonder, skinwalkers, what would this creature have done to him if he did go back to try to do a little bit more of an investigation?
Well, and clearly the creature, whatever it is, based upon the story, had an interest in him. You know,
Yes.
there was some interest in him, and what could be that interest? It's one can only speculate.
Correct. It shook him up. And again, he told me it was about a year or two after this happened is when he, stopped me in the hallway and told me his story. And he says, I haven't, and to this day, he's another one that we use his first name, but we don't have any photos or anything because he's still working. And he says, yeah, I don't really want to be identified on this. But yeah, he was even telling me the story. He was scared. He's a very serious guy. He doesn't even joke around. So when he told me this story and what I see in this photo, even though it might look like a cartoon, right, this is what he saw. And he was very serious about it.
Well, and that reminds me of obviously of the things taking place at the SW Ranch.
That's true.
Exactly. I
Exactly.
mean, and I don't mean to be flippant about it, but no, it really does remind me of the kind of things that are going on over there. And you've been fortunate enough to investigate those sorts of cases. Most of what I get over here in Wyoming is anomalous nocturnal lights. That's the majority of the sightings I get, and I love doing the thing I recorded the other night. Very, very interesting. But you folks have an especially interesting role to play in MUFON, and that's what I find so fascinating is you're investigating these cases, and it's unfortunate that we don't have a lot of law enforcement folks that are out there investigating that can also investigate for MUFON and give us their MUFON reports. I mean, obviously we've got you folks. It would be nice to have a whole cadre of investigating law enforcement officers that can easily operate within the parameters that are set by their jobs to investigate UFO stuff. And at least be able to record the data and release it when the case is all closed. If there's a criminal case associated with it, and there's some intermingling evidence, but it seems to me that that'd be a really good thing.
Yeah, I think it would be fascinating and very effective. That's why we kind of stepped up to help with the training of the field investigators during our boot camp that we have in Arizona in November, and then even at the symposium. We try to kind of impart our wisdom and our knowledge into them so that they can be more, I guess, equipped, for lack of a better term, to go out there. But one of the big things, and that's kind of the crux of what our talk is going to be at the symposium, is kind of helping to explain exactly like what you're saying, why that isn't happening. And it really, the majority of our conversation that we're going to have and that we've done for a couple of different organizations already is kind of diving into that, the stigmas and the why. Why are these officers, if we are seeing things, and some of us have, and we're experiencing these things, why are we not coming forward and saying it? Because like you the credibility, like you hit on earlier, the credibility of these witnesses are outstanding, yet they're not coming forward and talking. And that whole question of why is what we're going to try and kind of help explain, so that when people look at us and say, well, these officers, they're not saying stuff, it must be part of a conspiracy. It's really not a conspiracy, but it's probably something people hadn't really thought of. And that's why we want to try and kind of impart that onto people so that they understand, okay, now I kind of feel a little bit more sure of what's going on there. Because a lot of it has to do with, again, like you said, like Wyoming versus Arizona. Arizona is a unique place in the respect that there are a variety of different things that we're experiencing out here, and there's a variety of different, climate. And what I mean by that is we have cities, but then we also have reservations. And things like a skinwalker story on the reservation that's their culture. That's part of their culture. So for them to look at that, it'd be no different than you and me going, hey, there's a payphone. Did you see that payphone? We're going to be like, oh yeah, I know payphones exist, but I haven't seen one in a while. It's like the same thing with them, where if you talk about star people or a sighting in the sky or a skinwalker or some sort of spirit, to them, it is a huge part of their culture. So to them, it's not as detrimental to come forward and talk about it. And we've noticed it with officers. We've done interviews with officers on some of the reservations here, and they're like, oh yeah, you can use my name. Yeah, I'll tell you all about it. And we interviewed like 3 guys from Gila River PD, which is a reservation out here, and they gave us 6 stories because to them, they were like, oh, okay, yeah, no big deal. And when I was talking to one of them about it, he was completely floored because the only agency he had ever worked for was the reservation PD. So when I explained to him my story and about all of the flack that I had, getting called upstairs and getting accused of lying and all of the ramifications that I ended up dealing with for a number of years, he looked at me like I was crazy. He's like, what? How? Why would they even do that? And the difference is I worked for a city PD and he worked for the reservation PD where it's more accepted there. And that's kind of a part of what our conversation is at the end of us talking about the stigmas and the problems with why law enforcement and first responders can't come forward, we inevitably get the question of, well, how do we fix this?
It almost sounds exactly like the stigma that follows airline pilots, and the same sort of culture. And there's a different culture here than, like say in Europe or in Great Britain. They have an open, active investigation type of organization over there, and pilots feel free to file their cases. But here, well, and maybe that's changing over time because I think the phenomenon has gained considerable credibility, as we all know, since 2017 and all the things going on in Congress right now. One of the things I was curious about, you mentioned earlier the White Mountains, which and of course that brings to mind Travis Walton and the event that he had in the White Mountains. Any other cases that you've investigated that have taken place in the White Mountains or that are similar perhaps to Travis Walton's case?
How long is your story?
Well, we were going to do about an hour, so we got a little bit of time.
We could be here for a while talking about the stuff that we've found out in the White Mountains.
Well, give us a highlight. Something that really sticks out in your mind is something like, well, this goes right along with what happened to Travis, or here's something that that maybe might rival Travis. I mean, something that out of all the cases you've investigated and incidents there that you think kind of stand out.
I'm trying to think of
White Mountains.
That's the one.
The person that we interviewed just a few days ago, he was with the Highway Patrol. He was up near Lyman Lake, which is up in that area, the Springerville, Eager, and that general area. It was about 10 o'clock at night, and he was in his patrol car. And as he was just driving, all of a sudden he had this very bright light, like right over his patrol car. And he's looking and he can barely see it just through his windshield. So he's like, what in the world? So he pulls over and he looks out his driver's window and looks out. And here is, and I want to say maybe 20, 30 feet approximately above him.
Yeah, about 30 feet.
And it is like a huge spotlight straight down out. There is no sound. There's nothing. It's just right there. Just over top of him.
And at the time that he sees it, it's stationary, not moving at all, no noise. He's worked this area extensively for a number of years. So the first question that we have, because we always go into it with a skeptical nature, is, well, are there any fire towers, any radio towers, anything like that? He's like, absolutely not. Well, where I was parked, it was right by the entrance to Lyman Lake. And there is nothing. There are no street posts. There are no telephone lines, towers, fire towers, nothing there. And then what happened next is kind of intriguing.
Well, he took his spotlight. Yeah, his police cars, you always have a spotlight on the driver's side. On the left hand, use your left hand to start the spotlight. He turned on his spotlight and he pointed it up toward the light. All of a sudden, that light shot straight up into the sky and was gone. So he sat there for, I don't know, maybe 5 or so minutes staring at this light. As soon as he pointed his spotlight onto that light, that point of light, it just took off, shot off into the sky, and it was gone.
Up towards the lake. So one of the things that he does is he gets on the radio and starts asking, because the first thing that he starts thinking, well, it was stationary, but maybe it was like a helicopter or an airplane or something like that. But this thing was gone. So he drives down the road towards the lake thinking, well, maybe this is like a plane that crashed or something like that, some sort of aircraft that crashed. So he cleared on the radio and asked, and they're like, no, we don't have any reports of anything like that. He gets out to the lake, and it's only like a couple minute drive to the lake. And he can look at the entire lake. There's no wreckage. There's no sign of anything going down, no crash site, no nothing. This thing took off, and it just took off. But the moment that he first saw it, it was stationary. And he stopped the car and looked at it. So it wasn't like, oh, well, it was flying at him where it can look stationary. No, it was there. It was stopped. He was stopped. And it was just hanging out there until he shined the spotlight up on it. And then that thing shot off.
And again, what happened? He got on the radio. He's a rookie, got on the radio. And probably for months after that, he was ridiculed and laughed at by his fellow DPS officers, dispatchers, everybody. And he said, I should have just kept my mouth shut, because it brought him grief after he got on the radio with this. So, and that's what we're seeing with officers. They're not talking because that's what they're afraid of, losing their credibility and getting ridiculed by their fellow officers or supervisors. And like this one here, had his job threatened that if he keeps talking, you're going to get fired. They're definitely not going to talk.
No.
Wow.
We do too much to get this job. And maybe I'm naive in this belief, but I still believe that the majority of the people that get into this job are doing it because we want to help people. And when you find out how much work it goes into getting this job, when you're sitting in a room and you got people that have bars, stripes, stars, and they're accusing you of lying when you have video proof or you have audio proof, and they're telling you you need to shut up, you have a moment where you really reflect. I've got a wife, I've got kids, I've got a family to support. What am I going to do? If I lose this job, no other agency is going to hire me. I'm done. Maybe I should just keep my mouth shut. So whenever I hear that from an officer, he's like, and we've heard it so many times, I should have just kept my mouth shut. And I'd be lying if I didn't say, yeah, there was a time when I was like, I should have just kept my mouth shut.
Where does that come from, Dave? I mean, I know you're saying that that the leadership is basically putting you in that position, and my question is, why do you think that is? Is it simply because it goes against their own personal beliefs that they all share, or is it something from higher up? I mean, I guess that's the conspiracy theorist in me, which is but where do you think that comes from? Why are you not allowed to simply be honest? Especially now, it would seem that the higher ups would be more open to their officers having experiences like this.
I can tell you real quick where I think personally it comes from. Your credibility is everything in this job, because if I go to any type of call for service, whether it's like a stolen vehicle or a burglary or anything like that, there's two things that I've got going for me: my physical evidence and my credibility. When it comes to sitting on the stand and testifying in a case, that's what it's going to come down to. A defense attorney knows this. A defense attorney also knows that he has 12 people that couldn't come up with a good enough excuse to get out of the jury box. So all he has to do is convince one of those 12 people that what I'm saying is incredible. Now, let me ask you this.
Well, remember, you're asking a lawyer that's been practicing for 30 years. So I know exactly what you're getting at. Because, well, isn't it true that during this event you saw a UFO?
So I'm on the scene. You're asking me a question. Say I just ran around telling people 3 months ago that I just saw Bigfoot walking down the street. Now, I've taken an oath that I'm going to tell the truth. Now, this can have absolutely nothing to do with it. We've been talking about like a stolen car or a burglary. Right. And all you have to do is look at me and go, officer, did you see Bigfoot? And now what am I going to do? I take an oath I'm going to tell the truth. So I say, yeah, I saw a Bigfoot. And you're banking on one thing. One person in that jury panel is going to be like, you believe that? That guy's crazy. Because everybody else in that jury box, that jury room, is going to also say, no, I don't believe in that stuff. I don't want to be. I'm not the crazy one. That guy's crazy.
Yeah, you have to buy both at the same time. That if the evidence that the officer collected is being related by the same guy that saw Bigfoot, then the evidence that he gathered can't have much credibility because the guy's a nutball.
There you go. Now, as an officer, if I get roasted on the stand by you, all you have to do is look at all your defense attorneys and say, any case that he has any involvement in, just ask him if he saw Bigfoot. And then the prosecuting attorneys are going to go to my bosses and say, this guy's useless to me. I can't use him anywhere.
Yeah.
So then my boss is going to look at me and go, you're useless to me. Yeah. I'm not going to pay you to stick around. You can't testify in the case. You can't do anything. Your credibility's shot.
Well, just to clarify, I'm a prosecutor, and I work with police all the time.
All right. I appreciate that.
So I support my police officers, but if one of them, and they know that I'm kind of into this stuff, and if one of them approached me with a story, I'd keep it to myself, but I would say, interesting. But
that's the thing, Richard, is that you are not a skeptic. You kind of believe, stuff happens. The supervisor, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know the supervisor that did this to him. Well, I think it scares that supervisor. It's the ignorance that he has, that he doesn't go, oh, Dave, okay, and maybe look into what could happen. Maybe this phenomena of UFOs or paranormal or anything, instead of maybe studying up a little bit on that, listening to science folks, ufologists. No, he's ignorant.
He wanted me to shut up, and he wanted me out of his office as quickly as possible.
Because it probably scared him. And then he was using his bars to demand that Dave just be quiet instead of, maybe looking into things.
Yeah. I imagine that attitude pervades military and paramilitary organizations like police organizations, because there is, to my understanding, a sort of problem with leadership, and that they are in fact afraid of all of this because of their religious beliefs, and by studying it or acknowledging that it is here, that somehow we're inviting Satan into our realm, or devils or whatever, and we're allowing Satan to do his work amongst us, which I don't know what to say about that.
Well, and just even take the religious side out of it. Up until my experience, I didn't believe it either. I was 100%, oh, that's all garbage. Yeah, there's no way. There's no life on other planets. There's nothing. There's nothing like that. Until you get to the point where you see something that you can't explain. And then being trained in how to investigate it, I investigated. And I went down every possible road until I got to the point where I had to stop and go, I have no explanation for this. And then there's that moment of realization where all of a sudden you become very small, because you realize that this world and all the stuff in it is a lot bigger than you thought. And when your job is to walk into a situation and take charge of that situation and make sure everything is good, and now you're venturing down this road of you don't have the ability to take charge of this situation. And I think a lot of leadership has that, where it's like, you need to shut up and stop talking about it, because I don't know how to handle that.
Right.
So if we don't know about it, if we don't deal with it, if it's not, I can pretend it's not real.
No.
And
That's what we share in common as investigators, is that sort of moment of realization that you experience somewhere along the line when you investigate these matters, and you sort of reach this point where it dawns on you, just as you said, Dave, that you're a lot smaller than you thought that you were. You know, you're not all that smart, and all the stuff that you thought you knew about the world just goes right out the window. But then after a while, you start to realize that that's the case, and then you just go along your merry way and realize how stupid you are. You know,
stupid for thinking I was bigger than I am.
Right, but open-minded as well. And well, we've about reached the end of our time, but I really want to thank the both of you very, very much for joining me here today and for giving us somewhat of an insight into what your talk is going to be like this summer. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. I will be there as well. And I really appreciate you being with me here today.
Absolutely.
We thank you for the invite. We are very strong with this, where we believe so much in this. And if you know of any law enforcement officers that have had encounters that don't know where to go, please direct them our way. We are here for them basically 24/7. I'll be more than happy to go anywhere in this country to face and do an interview with them.
Well, coincidentally, I do in fact know someone like that, and so I will do my best to send him or her your way.
Yep.
And again, I appreciate you being with me here today, and I'll be back in just a moment with some afterthoughts.
You are listening to the official podcast of the Mutual UFO Network.
And the final little bit, afterthoughts, comes to you in 3, 2, 1. Things we can't explain happen around us all the time. They are things that are sometimes difficult to talk about, but as law enforcement officers, they are even more difficult because they sometimes come with career-altering consequences. You could be ridiculed by your colleagues, miss out on promotions, lose your credibility in court, or even lose your job. What makes this even more tragic is that law enforcement officers invariably provide the best and most accurate descriptions of anomalous events. Fortunately, thanks to Marianne Robb and Dave Rich, these trusted individuals have someone they can talk to about their unexplainable experiences. Thank you for joining us once again. Please leave your comments, and if you haven't done so, please remember to like and subscribe. And we'll see you next time right here on the official MUFON Podcast.